so this is going to hurt a lot. And I just lost my eardrums. I am Brandon Fisher, and in this video I'm going to tell you a little bit about the United States Army Air Defense Artillery Corps and my military involvement in air defense. In the United States, there are two sides to aviation: civilian aviation and military aviation. Civilian aviation is primarily used for things like transportation and surveillance. The military, however, utilizes aviation for not only these reasons, but also national defense. As technology evolves, unfortunately so do weapon systems, as they become stronger, faster, and more reliable. While it is easily arguable that the United States is at the forefront of aviation technology, it does not guarantee our protection from foreign attacks, airborne or otherwise. The Air Defense Artillery branch exists to protect America from any kind of aerial threat that may be posed upon her. Much like how the Air Force branched off of the United States Army, Air Defense Artillery was originally a part of the Army's Field Artillery branch. It was easily recognized that air superiority in wartime provided a huge advantage, so around World War II, the time of the creation of the Air Force, Air Defense Artillery was also created. The logo of Air Defense Artillery is two cross-field guns, or cannons, surmounted by an upward-pointing missile. Cross cannons signify artillery, while the missile represents the ability and readiness to counter anything in the sky. Today, Air Defense Artillery is generally based around 7 pillars: shape, sense, warn, intercept, respond, command and control, and to protect. In the earliest days of air defense, the only things people could really do, because of technology limitations, were shape, sense, and possibly warn. The term shape means to deny an enemy of any kind of advantage, such as using terrain or other obstacles to gain an upper hand. Since aviation and the technology that goes along with it are constantly evolving, these other pillars have been added on. In World War II, Germany heavily used the Flak-Vierling 38, or commonly called a flak cannon, for their air defense efforts. In the beginning of the war, the flak cannon proved extremely effective since it fired 20mm rounds that were capable of penetrating enemy airplanes. However, since technology development is accelerated during wartime, the flak cannon quickly became unable to hit fast-moving airplanes. As far as American involvement in Europe, the United States did not really develop a weapon as specific as the Flak-Vierling. Instead, they typically used 4 M2 50 caliber machine guns linked together, and then put this in the back of a vehicle. This was known as the Quad 50. However, the U.S. quickly realized the necessity to counter low-flying, heavy aircraft, and implemented the extremely powerful 90mm M1A1 cannon. This gun was actually the predecessor to the M26 Pershing tank, which was used in the Korean War. During the Vietnam War, air defense artillery received what can be identified as the predecessor of today's non-missile-based air defense systems. The M163 Vulcan air defense system was a self-propelled anti-aircraft gun. Self-propelled is really just a fancy way of saying it is on the back of a moving vehicle. It uses an M61 Vulcan Gatling-styled cannon. This type of gun has been used on, and is still used on, many common fighter planes today, starting with the F-111 Aardvark, F-14 Tomcat, F-15 Eagle, F-16 Fighting Falcon, FA-18 Hornet, F-22 Raptor, and AC-130. All of these planes are incredible, but unfortunately, if it can fly, it can die. I stated that the M163 was the predecessor of modern air defense artillery. This is because it was one of the first ground weapons to utilize a radar system. This made it extremely effective at night, and increased its potency tenfold, since it did not necessarily require manual aiming and firing. While bullets are effective at shooting down aircraft, they do have their disadvantages. Since they are relatively low caliber and lightweight shells, their range is limited. The M48 Chaparral was one of the first self-propelled surface-to-air missile systems. The Chaparral missile was based on the AIM-9 Sidewinder missile. The Sidewinder is an air-to-air missile, meaning it was equipped on planes to shoot down planes. However, since the Chaparral is fired from the ground, modifications had to be made so it could be successful. The Sidewinder contains 4 rollerons, which are basically ailerons for rockets. At the end of a rolleron is a gyroscopic wheel, which will quickly spin as airflow passes over it. Should the rocket begin to tumble, the rollerons will counteract it, deflecting in the opposite direction of the rotation. This is why many missiles give the appearance of spinning out of control when they are first fired. The Chaparral used a first-generation infrared seeker. It was one of the first heat-seeking missiles. The downfall of this is that weapons that use this technology, which is now known as forward-looking infrared, are easily deceived by flares, which divert heat. In my military experience, I worked with many different modern surface-to-air weapon systems. I have done test fires of the Stinger missile, M1097 Avenger, Patriot missile system, and Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD. The Stinger missile is an infrared-seeking weapon that is portable and fired from the shoulder. It has a range of over 16,000 feet and can strike targets between altitudes of 600 and 13,000 feet. The Stinger missile is able to be programmed with a memory chip that will allow it to distinguish between friendly aircraft and non-friendly aircraft. During the Cold War, the United States sold hundreds of Stinger missiles to Afghanistan so they could fight the Soviets. Unfortunately, they are using those same Stingers against us today in Operation Enduring Freedom, and even sold some of them to Iran and North Korea. The United States currently owns more than $7 billion worth of Stinger missiles, and there is rumor that the Secret Service has some, in case they would need to defend the president from an aerial attack. The M1097 Avenger is a self-propelled Stinger missile, 8 of them to be more specific. It is a highly mobile, well-armed air defense unit. The Avenger has not seen any combat action for its purpose, since it is a recent weapon and the aircraft threats in Iraq and Afghanistan are almost non-existent. The Avenger is also equipped with a 50 caliber machine gun, just in case. The Patriot missile system is a system of systems. It utilizes numerous remote radars and talks to them to correlate hitting a target. The Patriot was deployed in the first Gulf War, but its success is controversial. In one incident, the missile system's internal clock was off by 1/3 of a second, which caused it to miss an incoming Iraqi Scud missile by 600 feet. The Scud hit a U.S. Army barracks in Saudi Arabia and killed 28 soldiers. The last system which I have done test fires with is the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System. Much of the information surrounding it is still classified, as it is still under development, so unfortunately I cannot tell you too much about it. The THAAD is capable of countering intercontinental ballistic missiles. If the word intercontinental is any hint, this thing has a huge range. From 2007 until I got out of the Army in 2010, I spent most of my time working with an air defense system known as CRAM, or Counter Rocket, Artillery, and Mortar. In the first years of Operation Iraqi Freedom, or as known to many, the Iraq War, the amount of casualties due to attacks from mortars and rockets were devastating. In 2007, the CRAM operation was deployed in Iraq at various military bases. The purpose of CRAM was to defend friendly forces on bases by providing early warning, incoming fire detection, and incoming fire destruction. CRAM involves a multitude of systems to operate, but its effectiveness is unparalleled. How does it work? I wish it was simple, but it's not. At the heart of CRAM is the land-based phalanx weapon system. The phalanx is a modern version of the Vulcan cannon. It employs a Gatling gun, but it's a bit stronger than the ones used in the Vietnam War, 4,500 rounds per minute faster. That's 75 rounds per second. I will come back to the phalanx in a moment. Also on the counter-rocket artillery and mortar team are various radar systems. The primary radar system is the Sentinel radar. The Sentinel can detect and identify anything that flies within its 30-mile radius. It reports flight speed, elevation, and friendliness of airplanes, helicopters, UAVs, gliders, rockets, and mortars to an engagement's operations cell, which is where I worked. The LCMR, or Lightweight Counter-Mortar Radar, does nearly the same, only it deals specifically with mortars and rockets. Upon picking up a hostile threat, a radar system will quickly talk to any other linked radars. If 2 or more radars agree on the threat, then the target is identified as unfriendly and alerts me, the engagement operations cell, of the attack. Simultaneously, a message will be relayed to all wireless audio and visual emergency systems, or waves, in the vicinity of the attack. Waves are towers that push out the signal in the form of loud sirens and strobe lights, essentially telling people to take cover. While the sirens sound and the radars update information on the threat, the engagement operations cell views cameras which are attached to the phalanx weapon system following the rocket or mortar. If it can be visually identified as such, weapons are released and the target is fired upon. The way the phalanx fires is in a line of trajectory. The radar system tells the gun the point of origin of the rocket or mortar and the predicted point of impact. The gun then sprays in a line in an effort to hit its target. After the attack, it is possible for the engagement operations cell to deploy counterfire or a quick reaction force, since the origin of the attack is known. It can be in the form of field artillery or Apache airstrikes, depending on the severity. During my deployment in Iraq, I worked in the Al-Fa Palace on Camp Victory, the former headquarters of Saddam Hussein. I operated under General David Petraeus, and from my unit's involvement with CRAM in Baghdad until the end of Operation Iraqi Freedom in August of 2010, no one was injured by rocket or mortar attacks in Camp Victory, Iraq.